When President Buhari was sworn in, you were reported to have expressed a conviction that this man is going to move Nigeria and erase all of these issues. Do you still have that same conviction now?
Well, yes, and I want to assure you that President Muhammadu Buhari has been doing his best. His best.
Is that best? Is it good enough to give you that comfort that you had in 2015?
There's no doubt. The Yorubas have this adage. On any two, bani wo yewu, kò mọ tá à ń ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀. I've been in government for 3.5 years, and I know that in the circumstances that we found ourselves, because if you talk of a presidency, particularly with regard to, security and fighting insecurity, I mean, he is not the one to go out and confront, Boko Haram and confront bandits and all of that. We have the Nigerian Armed Forces, which itself is doing the best in the circumstance. Recall that within the short time that Buhari came on board, a lot of arms and ammunition, including Tucano, aircrafts, which had been budgeted for over the years and which the previous government, maladministered such budgetary funding. He got them in place, and he got them for the armed forces to utilize. And that contributed largely to decimating or degrading Boko Haram. Recall also that at the time Buhari was coming on board, there was nothing like banditry, which we have in the Northwest. We didn't have it. We didn't have, kidnapping and all of that. These are recent, events and recent challenges. And I can assure you that the armed forces and the security forces are doing their best to contain them.
But is Nigeria more secured now than it was in 2015?
You cannot say Nigeria is more secure now because of new emerging challenges. If you have to think of the enormity of the problems of banditry, you would sympathize with the government.
Really?
You would sympathize.
But the people whose relatives and friends have been murdered will have difficulty sympathizing with the person they elected to protect their lives and property.
The truth must be told. Criminals would not give notice.
No, they won't.
And when it happens, government has to start planning, particularly the armed forces.
Are you satisfied with the response of the government to the series of criminal activities that we've witnessed nationally in the last 7 years?
You see, it will be very difficult to really give a response, a yes or no response, because we don't know the challenges. It is the armed forces are paid and they have a constitutional role to play. For us to be able to assess them, for us to be able to appreciate that even they are putting their lives on the line, fighting unknown enemies. It's not a conventional war that is being fought. It's not a conventional war. And you are fighting people who are almost completely illiterate, almost who are, people who are fatalistic, who don't care for their lives, perhaps because they live very hopeless lives over the years, and who perhaps are rebelling against age-old inter-ethnic oppression and conflict, particularly in the Northwest.
Well, since you want to stay away from assessing the response of the government, I will let that slide. But something that's related to banditry, to kidnapping, to ritual killing, abduction, and all manner of violent criminality across the nation.
Yes.
Not only in the Northwest, everywhere.
Yes.
And it's been on the rise, we both agree, in the last 7
years,
years, under the watch of our Commander-in-Chief presently.
Yes.
Something that some experts have identified is an instigator, a major instigator is economic impoverishment.
Yeah.
Would you...
Partly.
Yes. How would you assess the performance of this government economically?
Well,
because let me give you the list of the things that got you excited that time, going by that report. You talked about insecurity, that you are confident that in little time, this will be eradicated by the president. Unemployment, corruption, economic regression or retrogression, impunity, poor power generation, refineries, the subsidies, that all of these things will be addressed by the president.
You see,
So I want to know,
yes,
7 years after, are you still excited the way you were in 2015?
Number one, let me say straight away, I'm not here to represent the government because
Definitely.
I don't work for government now.
You are a thought leader.
Number two is I don't have all the indices. If we want to do justice to these issues, we need to have enough time to be able to identify them, seek responses and reactions from appropriate officers in government to let us know what government has done on each and every one of these. To just ask me here, impromptu, to reply to government's reactions on each of these things would be most unfair. So I want to believe that perhaps you should give enough notice to the Minister of Information or the Minister of,
If I may interject, if you will permit me. You are a thought leader by any stretch. And you are a public affairs.
As a thought leader, I can only engage in guesses,
conjecture,
particularly when I don't have authoritative and recent information on these issues.
So you would not be willing to assess?
It would be unfair on those to be assessed if without information. I mean, if you
ask, before this government came, you were doing that in media circles as a public affairs commentator.
Again, on public affairs projections and all of that. But now government has been in place and there have been people put in charge of each of these responsibilities. And there's need for anybody who will make public comment on them to seek their reactions before. Otherwise, at my level, it would be stupid of me to just,
You were in government for 3.5 years. So you work closely in the federal executive. You perhaps will be able to tell us what are the constraints of the president and his team. Well, because the scorecard on the street is that the president's performance has been woeful. That's the scorecard on the street.
These issues are honestly too serious to be, left in the hand of somebody who does not, as of today, have authoritative information. I left office about 3 years ago. And I think
while you were in office, what were the constraints experienced by the president?
Well, one of the constraints, particularly in the area of finance, was the fact that before Buhari came on board as president, oil was selling for about $100 plus.
Sure.
By the time we came on board, oil, the price had gone down to about $27. And with increasing responsibilities, increasing expenditures. That certainly will create a lot of gaps and all of that. But despite that, I'll give an example.
Please.
The last budget of the Jonathan administration on federal roads, the last budget was 19 billion naira on federal roads. 19 billion naira. I can tell you that not one kobo of it was even spent on any federal road. The monies were simply put on the table and shared among political leaders then. But the first budget of Buhari on federal roads was 265 billion. And that resulted to the resumption of work on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which had been abandoned for more than 10 years before then. Resumption of work on Oyo-Ogbomosho Road. Resumption of work on Lagos, Sangwater, Abeokuta Road, and in all other zones. So these are things that one would proudly associate with the Buhari government.
It strikes me.
Been able to do that in the first year, I mean, certainly there would have been improvements on a yearly basis.
So you're willing to appraise the scorecard of the president in infrastructural development?
Of course, he has done more. In the history of Nigeria, no government has done near what Buhari has done.
But you wouldn't be willing to appraise him on security?
No, on security, because security issues are issues that you can really not pin down. Security issues are not issues because you don't know what is happening. You also know very well that Even security budgets are not always in the open. You don't know how many soldiers are involved. You don't know how many soldiers are being killed. You don't know how many aircrafts are being deployed and all of that. These are specialized issues. And then if you're talking of routes, for instance, you can say the totality of Nigerian routes are maybe 100,000 kilometers or 200,000. You cannot say the same thing with regard to how many bandits are springing up by the day and how many interdictions are occurring here and there and so on. So it's a more cloudy thing, and you require expert security knowledge before.